The morning Sophie Ward tried to tow my boat off my own lake, I realized two things at once. One, that sticker she slapped on my hull was about to end up stuck to her own damn shoe. And two, the HOA had finally pushed hard enough to wake up a side of me I hadn't used in years. When the chain rattled, the crowd gasped, and Sophie shouted orders like she owned the place. Something inside me snapped. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about a boat anymore. This was war. I've lived on Lake Sanders my whole life. Woke up to cedar air, fished the coves barefoot. Watched kids learn to paddle in water my grandfather taught me to respect long before I could swim. This lake isn't just mine on paper, it's part of my bones. And because of that, I've always kept it open. Anyone could fish, swim, picnic, whatever they wanted. I never charged a dime. Folks looked out for each other, and the lake looked out for us. Or it used to. Then Sophie Ward moved in. Now, if you've ever met a true HOA Karen, you know the type clipboard glued to her palm, sunglasses big enough to hide the lack of humanity inside, walking like every sidewalk is a runway for petty tyranny. She started with friendly notices, mailbox color reminders, porch light suggestions, landscaping uniformity guidelines. You know, harmless at first, like a raccoon sniffing around your trash. Then she got elected HOA president, and overnight she turned into the kind of woman who measures your grass height with a tape measure but can't measure her own self-awareness. Did I take her seriously? No. I tossed the first letter in the wood stove. The second one made me roll my eyes. But the third claimed my boat was obstructing HOA scenic access. That one got filed right next to every deed survey and riparian rights document my grandfather left me. When paper comes for you, you meet it with better paper. The morning she first marched down my dock, towing company behind her like she was leading a parade of bad decisions. I was drinking coffee on my porch. The tow truck driver looked like he wanted to quit his job, move states, and maybe change his identity. Sophie barked, "This boat is too big. Remove it immediately." She smacked a bright orange violation sticker onto the hull like she was branding cattle. It peeled right off, floated around for a second, and slapped straight onto the toe of her high heel. The crowd burst out laughing. Even the ducks seemed entertained. And then Sheriff Tom, my brother, pulled up. Hat low, voice calm. "Ma'am, you got paperwork for this." Sophie blinked, sputtered, searched her binder like maybe a genie would pop out and save her. Nothing. No papers, no authority, no clue. Tom shook his head. "Then step off this dock. You're trespassing." That was the first time I saw fear flicker in her eyes. But pride is a hell of a drug. She left red-faced and furious, and I knew she'd be back. People like her don't retreat, they reload. What surprised me wasn't her persistence. It was the community reaction. Neighbors whispered about rude demands, surprise inspections, threats over lawn decorations. People who used to smile politely now glanced over their shoulders, like the HOA might pop out from behind their mailbox. That's when I started keeping a notebook, dates, conversations, letters, everything. Because bullies always make two mistakes: they push too far, and they push the wrong person. But I'll be honest, somewhere in the middle of all this, right after she blasted the neighborhood Facebook group calling me a hostile, non-compliant resident, I started to doubt myself. Should I just let her take the damn boat? Should I stop fighting? Was peace worth more than being right? When you're standing alone against an entire board waving clipboards, it wears on you, makes you feel small. One night I sat in the quiet cabin staring at my grandfather's old deed, thinking maybe I should give up. I actually whispered, "What if I'm wrong, old man?" The room felt heavy, and for a moment I really believed maybe I was the problem. Then my phone rang. It was a banker. Soft voice, calm tone, asking if I knew the HOA was close to defaulting on their marina improvement loan. I stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. Marina improvements. Secured by what? That little dock. Those slips. And then he said it. If someone were interested, the note could be purchased. That was the moment I stood back up. That was the reminder of who I was, the man who grew up on this water, not the guy who got pushed around by a woman with a binder full of imaginary rules. I bought that note. Didn't brag about it. Didn't tell Tom. Didn't tell anyone. I just quietly bought the financial heartbeat of Sophie's little kingdom. If she wanted to play with paperwork, I'd show her how adults do it. Of course she didn't know, not yet. She came back the next weekend. Bigger entourage. 2 board members, same tow truck guy, looking like he wanted to disappear. And this part kills me. A cameraman and a lawyer in a suit 2 sizes too hopeful. Sophie announced, "We have legal counsel present to enforce Community Code 5B. I leaned on the railing. On my dock. On my lake. On my property. She snapped, "This dock falls under HOA scenic jurisdiction." I made her say that again loud, clear in front of neighbors, in front of the camera guy, because I knew what was coming. A Coast Guard auxiliary van rolled up. The officer took one look at her binder of highlighted Wikipedia pages and said, "Ma'am, community bylaws don't override federal water rights. You can't enforce anything here." Someone in the crowd muttered, "Even the lake rejects her." Another kid fished pages of her binder out of the water and read them like dramatic poetry. Sophie's face was the color of a warning label. She screamed, tried to issue another violation, and once again the sticker slid off and stuck to her shoe. If the lake had hands, it would have slow-clapped. By now the neighborhood was laughing, recording, sharing clips online. Memes exploded. One said HOA tries to evict Coast Guard, gravity intervenes. I didn't laugh. Not loud anyway. I'd already moved to the next step. Because you don't win a war by mocking the general. You win by taking their land. When escrow closed on the marina mortgage note under my LLC Blue Cedar Holdings, I owned every piece of paper that mattered. The marina, the slips, the dock, the path. All of it. Every inch Sophie used for her big speeches now technically belonged to me. And right on cue, she organized a rally called Take Back the Lake, printed flyers, invited a news station, had a megaphone. I hosted a BBQ on the same day and same location. That morning, both crowds showed up. Sophie in full pink blazer shouting into her megaphone about community rights. Me grilling ribs on property her HOA now owed me money for. She tried to wave a letter in my face, fake legal seal, crooked signature. I flipped it around. Template sample. The crowd erupted. Even the news anchor laughed. Then Mark, the tow truck driver, backed up, hooked her SUV and said, "Owner requested removal." Sophie shrieked, "Who is the owner?" I lifted the deed. Me. Her face cracked. Literally cracked. Like a mirror dropped on concrete. That night the video hit 500,000 views before sunrise. And then she sued me. I wasn't surprised. Desperation makes fools theatrical. The courthouse was packed. People stood in the aisles. Some wore shirts that said, "Free the lake." Sophie sat front row with a new lawyer who looked like he'd Googled how to lawyer on the drive there. She argued I didn't own the lake, that her bylaws meant more than the county recorder, that the community collectively believed they controlled the shoreline. Judge Whitaker listened, calm, patient. Then he asked for their evidence. Chaos. Papers with no seals. HOA bulletins. Printouts. A map drawn in green marker. At one point, her lawyer said the collective will of the homeowners supersedes individual property rights, and the judge literally blinked like he was trying to reboot himself. Then it was my turn. My attorney placed the deed, the plats, the surveys, the mortgage note transfer piece by piece on the table. The judge read them, nodded slowly, and said, "This deed is authentic. I remember Earl Sanders. Good man." Sophie slammed her hands down and screamed. He forged all of it. The judge leaned in. "Do you have proofs?" She held up a stack of violation notices. The entire courtroom laughed. Even the bailiff couldn't hold it in. Judge Whitaker dismissed the case with prejudice, ordered the HOA to pay every legal fee, and issued a final order. HOA barred from any access, involvement, or authority over the lake permanently. One more step onto my dock would be trespassing. That was the end for them. And Sophie. The next morning she showed up at the marina anyway, screaming, frantic, waving some folder like a white flag dipped in delusion. Deputies stopped her before she made it 3 steps onto the dock. "You have no jurisdiction here," Tom told her. She shouted, "This is my lake." I looked her dead in the eye. "No. You just borrowed fear long enough to make people forget who actually owns the ground they're standing on." When the deputies escorted her out, she kept yelling about conspiracies, corruption puppets, the whole circus. Her board trailed behind her like wilted flowers at a funeral. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't mock. They just watched, quiet, relieved, like a storm had finally passed. And just like that, it was over. I didn't celebrate, didn't throw a party. I just stood on the dock that night looking at the water glowing under the moon, thinking about how close I came to giving up, how close I came to letting fear or exhaustion or doubt hand over something my grandfather trusted me to protect. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't against other people, they're against yourself. And that's when the lesson hit me, the one I hope sticks with anyone who hears this. Bullies don't need power to win. They just need you to believe you don't have any.